First of all, welcome everybody. It's very nice to see so many people joining us for the workshop. We've had a very successful workshop yesterday, so I feel elated, but probably my expectations are far too high. So it's all right if everything crashes. I've had one great workshop already, so this is extra icing on the cake. It's my very, very great pleasure to welcome you to our second workshop, Social Bridges. The main reason for these workshops is because we don't have the luxury of tapping somebody on the shoulder and saying, something mundane like, do you have a pen? And then striking up a conversation and realizing you have lots in common. And then 10 years later, you're still collaborating. So we need other ways to make sure that we interact. And the other main mission of Social Bridges, and it's in the name, is that we need to bridge communities, bridge disciplines. I'm a strong believer in realizing that we can't possibly have all perspectives at once. And so we need the help of other people's eyes and ears. And so the hope for this specific workshop is to make sure that we're listening to everybody out there who might be doing things similar to us. And I think we're all very lucky to work in a field which has a lot of bearing on everyday life, but also pretty much every other discipline. So we've got a really great assortment of expertise on the screen, and I'm hoping we can take advantage of that. The hope is to make us do a bit of work as well as have a lot of fun. And to that end, I thought I would just share my screen with you quickly with what I think is the overview for today. So the plan is that we're going to make you do some work. We're going to do a little mirror game exercise. And for that, I have my very wonderful colleagues, Felix and Yasmin, who you probably know because they've been emailing you, who are going to lead us through what I think is going to be a live experience of what it is to coordinate with other people and see how awfully wrong it can go, but also how awfully great it can be when it does go well. And then we'll probably, hopefully have lots of reasons to talk. And these are a couple of questions that we can come back to and refer to, but I will add those back on screen when the time comes, when it's appropriate. But before we do that, why don't I pass you on to Felix, who is going to just tell you a little bit about what we're going to be doing. And then he, I think, is going to pass on to Yasmin.
Welcome, everyone. Glad to have you here at Social Bridges. I'm really glad you could make the time. So what we've prepared is a short exercise, and Yasmin will be your moderator. We will have a pair doing a demo of the exercise, so you don't have to worry, you will know what is expected of you. You just have to observe the demonstration, and I'll hand over to Yasmin now.
Thank you, Merle, and thank you, Felix, for the introduction. I'm extremely honored to be here, and I'm very pleased to see all of you. So we are going to do an exercise, which I'm sure some of you are familiar with, from either having done the exercise before or maybe having listened to some of our presentations on Wednesday and yesterday, or maybe even having used the exercise as a paradigm in your research. So the exercise is named the mirror game, where we will try and mirror each other's movements. So what will happen is that we will pair you up into dyads, where one of you will be the leader and the other the follower. So the leader will initiate and guide the movement, while making sure, of course, that the follower can keep up with their movements. The exercise is, after all, named the mirror game. So my advice would be to be as precise and as slow with your movements as possible. So much so that a third person watching you, me in this case, should not be able to tell which one of you is the leader and which one of you is follower. So the goal would be to move as one body, as one organism. So please keep in mind, again, that the exercise is called the mirror game, and we're trying to mirror each other's movements. So just as a warm-up, and so that we are all familiar with the exercise, I have chosen a couple from our dyads to demonstrate what I've been talking about. And the lucky couple will be Felix and Semih Ali Aksoy, Salih, if that's okay with you. Okay, great. So why don't you greet one another, say hello.
Hello, everybody, and hello, Felix.
Hello, Simi. Glad you're here.
Hello.
Okay. So for now, Salih, you'll be our leader, and Felix, you're the follower. So please move however you like, as freely as you want. And you pin them on the screen, perhaps?
Yeah, I was just thinking of this. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So
And
we just started.
maybe you could each pin your respective partners on your screen.
I'm seeing myself now. I cannot pin Felix. Exactly, I'm a mirror. Yeah, now I think. Okay, we start.
Merle, have you? We can't hear you.
I think Merle, you're muted.
I have put you guys in the middle of my screen, so what everybody on YouTube is seeing is you two next to each other. But pinning it only pins it for me. It doesn't pin onto YouTube, unfortunately. So go ahead, Felix and Simi. You're in the middle of my screen, so you're in the middle of my world. Go ahead.
I'm going to be following Semi now. So Semi, you can
Okay.
take it from here.
Thank you. That was actually perfect. Thank you for setting very high. So let me introduce other dyads. So Travis and Julien, if I'm pronouncing.
Julien, perfect.
Okay, and Travis, you will be the leader, and Julien, you're the follower. You are going to have to help me with your name, Yuval, is that correct? Okay, perfect. You are the leader, and you'll be doing the exercise with Sardar, who is the follower. And Diane, Miss Stillman, will be doing the exercise with Masis. And Diane, you'll be the you'll be the leader, and Masis, you'll be the follower. And Alexander, you'll be doing the exercise with Merle. And you will be the leader, Alexander, and Merle, you will be the follower, please. So if each of you could pin your partners to your screens, and the way to do that is that we all have 3 dots on the right top corner of our screens. So you click that and you say pin. Has that worked for all of you? Okay, let's greet one another. Say hello.
Hey, Sarah.
Hello.
Hello,
Nice to meet
Diane.
you.
How are you?
Thank you. I'm fine. How are you?
Okay. So again, just as a warm-up, let's start moving together with our partners. Leaders, please make sure that your followers can keep up with you, okay? You can move however you wish, no constraints. Go ahead.
Okay, Alexander, let's do this. Who is the leader?
Me.
Okay, I'm following.
Sally, I'm very sorry. You can do the exercise with Olga, please. And Sally, you again are the leader. I'm very sorry. Olga, can you see Semihali?
Hi.
Or again with Felix? So continue on with your partnership, please. Okay, some of you are really getting it. All right. Please stay in the flow and continue moving while I'm speaking. And throughout the exercise, let's try not to interrupt the flow of the movement in any way whatsoever. Now, please, without interrupting the flow, start brushing your teeth. And once you are done with that, start shaving your face. So first we brush our teeth and then we shave our faces. Followers, try to mirror your leaders as closely as possible. Let's be slow, let's be precise. All right, now again, without interrupting the flow, please reverse the roles. So the followers are now the leaders and the leaders are now the followers. You can start over, it's fine. Your partner is Serdar, Yuval. It's okay. Okay, I see that some of you have already started doing that, but now I'm going to ask you to stop shaving and start moving your hands within the frame of the screen in an abstract way. If you don't know what I'm talking about, you can briefly, while staying in the moment, look at what I'm doing. So just move your hands and arms within the frame of the screen in an abstract way. The roles are intact. Let's remember to be slow. And now the roles are dissolved. There are no leaders, there are no followers. Please try and keep mirroring one another. There are no leaders, there are no followers. Merle, I'm going to hand over to you now.
Okay, so if anybody did not enjoy that, I'm very sorry. I find it incredibly meditative and it's so quiet and peaceful and wonderful. But thank you very much for playing along. Thank you very much to Yasmin, first of all, for moderating us, but also for the wonderful idea of doing this with you all, because if nothing else, how else better to get to know people that you don't know? We now know you so well. We can follow your very strangest moves and we know how you brush your teeth. How intimate is that? So we're now going to move on to an exercise which is probably more topical, in that we're now going to try and do the same again as a group. I'm going to ask Yasmin to moderate again, and sadly it means she can't take part, but maybe you can. But we're going to try and now work together as a group.
All right. So now I think because Semihali has put on a wonderful exercise, how about we designate him as our group leader? and we are just all of us, so that I also can participate. We are going to mirror his movements. Can everyone see Semihali? If you could pin him to your screens. And Merle, right now we should be in gallery view, I think, for the, yeah.
Okay.
Whenever you're ready. Now only the hands. All right. Thank you very much.
Okay, so that was incredible. Thank you so much first to Semi and to Yasmin for allowing us to bond in that way. And the smiles on the screens, I hope doesn't mean awkward. It means, yay, that was wonderful. But if it's awkward, my apologies. The plan was to try and get us to do a dyadic task and a group task, which we've now done. But hopefully you also saw that there were two very different types of coordination tasks within that. There was a more defined one where the repertoire was a little bit more fixed, namely where you brush your teeth and shave your face. Obviously there is variation upon a theme, but it is more restricted, whereas the sort of abstract hand movement is just that. It is much more unbounded in terms of how much you can do with those two limbs. And maybe one of the things we can think about as we go forward in this workshop is what are those restrictions to creativity? And is it a restriction to provide definition, provide those limitations? But before we do that, what we've really only done is visual coordination through our body, right? We've only used the visual modality to help us synchronize with one another. So we're going to try and see what Zoom allows us to do in the auditory domain. Now, we are fully aware that there is a lag. We are fully aware that this could go horribly, horribly, horribly wrong. But I have done this before, and by the end of the song, everybody was more or less in sync. Or at least let's just say relatively the end was better than the beginning. So if you'll unmute yourself, and I don't know if it is anybody's birthday today, but if it's not, it's everybody's unbirthday, and we'll just sing to Mr. President. Let's all inhabit our own inner Marilyn Monroe and sing to Mr. President. And I'm hoping that if we start Happy birthday.
Anyway, we want to switch off our cameras, right?
Sure. Let's switch off our cameras so
Let's
that we
switch
don't
off the cameras. Let's take away the visual modality.
Okay. 1, 2, 3, 4. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you.
Happy birthday,
Mr. President. Happy birthday to you. Okay, so Zoom is terrible. Zoom is awful to us.
I hope it doesn't go on YouTube.
No. Yeah, so the auditory modality is very unforgiving, right? I mean, that's the nature of the auditory modality, right? We're so sensitive to very small variations in tone and timing. It makes it very difficult. And maybe one other thing that you noticed is, in the visual modality, because it's a motion sensor, the slower you go, the better it gets, right? You can pick up on those motion parameters much better. But another question we can start to think about is what happens in artistic creation or forms of artistic coordination where we require our artists to coordinate across multiple modalities. Isn't it an incredible feat that they can use these different modalities that have very different capabilities and limitations? So the hope was that you got a sense of what it is to coordinate with, in this case, a group of, I can count, 13, and people we don't know. So the other incredible thing there is that, some of us might know some other people, but we definitely don't know each other as a group. And aren't we an incredible species to create and coordinate with people we have no knowledge of beforehand? So I think it's been a great exercise, but now let's do some of the work. So I'd love to hear some people's thoughts on what the difference was between coordinating in the dyad and coordinating the group. That's one big question. What strategies did you use primarily? And then how did it feel? So what I'd like to do is go through the dyads one at a time, and you'll have to remind me who was in each of those dyads. But if you could tell me how it felt in your dyad, how fun or engaging was it on a scale of 1 to 7? And how coordinated do you think you were? So we'll start with Julien go ahead, Cedar, you start.
Well, I would like to start with an apology. Obviously, a very important part of coordination is being awake. It's about 7:30 here in New York. And perhaps, intelligence. I paired the wrong partner, unfortunately. So for the first half, my partner must have been very frustrated. And then in the second part, I frantically searched, and I think I found my right partner. So apologies first. And then to the extent I could follow the first one, because the problem, I was having great fun, thinking I was perfectly coordinated, aligning with my partner. So first part was terrific for me, although it was probably totally false. The group coordination, obviously, was somehow easier. I can't explain why. More natural, easier. Perhaps I wasn't now worried about partner business. It's entirely my own fault.
So would you say you enjoyed, which one did you enjoy the most? And if you could give me like a hard scientific rating of 1 to 7, 1 not fun at all or not engaging at all, and 7 very engaging, how would you compare working in the dyad versus working in the group?
You want scientific answers from an artist. Okay.
I know, go ahead.
Again, because I was in the wrong dyad, I was in error. I enjoyed to the point where I could, when I discovered my error, it was a great deal of fun. I would say, 8 or 9 over 10, for instance. The group was probably 9 or 10 for me. And again, it's just a gut feeling. Not, I don't think I can explain why I have that sense.
That's not a problem. How about we move to Yuval? How did you feel about the exercise?
So I enjoyed more the dyad. It felt like more contact, more personal. In a sense, the group we were sort of together. I didn't manage to mimic the agility of Sami's face, but
we're not all blessed with such incredible muscles.
Right. But somehow I enjoyed more the dyad. So the dyad would be 6.5, and the group was for me it was like 4.5, 4.
Okay, we'll move to Travis. I'm doing this in no particular order, so good luck, Felix, putting this together afterwards. But go ahead, Travis.
Yeah, I'm not sure what to say. I guess it felt quite...
You're a scientist, you should always know what to say.
I think in the dyadic context, there was a very sort of like visceral or meditative quality about just trying to think of what kind of movements to create and making sure that Julian and I were, that I wasn't skipping ahead and having the feedback of like myself as well was a bit difficult to kind of like regulate and also see what like he might be seeing. So there was a bit of perspective taking. For the group condition, I pinned Sami's video. So I only really saw him, but then I guess I felt maybe that there was still that connection, but yeah, that he was more broadly coordinating with everyone or just leading. And yeah, so I don't know if I had to give ratings, then I think I preferred the dyadic context as well, but both were similarly dyadic for me.
Can you give us a number?
Sure, 6 for dyadic and yeah, 5 for group.
These middling average numbers, man. Okay. What about asking Semi, you, the man with the muscles?
Yeah, I mean, it was different. I used to be like leading one and the following one. To be honest, I enjoyed more to follow when we do diet. So I don't know how does it feel to follow in group one. I don't know. I agree with the others' comments. Like when we are diet, it was like I feel with Felix now. I don't know who is he, but I feel like he's my friend now. I want to hug him. Like, you know, there's kind of connection with him. I feel in the group. I mean, in the group I have fun because it was in gallery view, yeah, like speaker view. I don't know which one is it, but I see a few at the same time. So it was so impressive to see everybody's like doing the movements, like, and after a moment I feel everybody's more or less like very coordinated. So, and even though like the movements are different, the feeling were same. So I think the muscle part is, I don't know, not important, but the expression part is more important. So I feel that, and it was like kind of feeling, I don't know, highness, everybody together. It was interesting to see on my screen like this.
Well, why don't you give us a rating as a function of being the leader in the diet and a leader in the group, so that we have some nice scientific comparability.
I had more fun as a leader in the group because of this feeling.
All powerful,
so maybe,
yes, I know.
7/7, like the group is 6, and the other is 5 plus 5.
Can you put it on
5.5.
a scale of 10, because we were moved to a scale of 10.
Okay. 7. One is like
1 is
8,
terrible, 10 is great.
and the other is 8.
Okay, did you get that, Felix?
Okay, like 8.5 and 8.
Okay,
8.5 and 8.
Okay.
It was
Okay.
8.5 and 8, right?
Yeah. What
Yeah,
about you,
8.5.
Alexander? You can unmute yourself, and then we can hear you.
Yeah, I definitely resonate with what others had to say. It was much more personal on on the dyadic and in the dyadic test. And it's very interesting to see that you seem to get to know the other person quite interesting because of the slow movements and the immediate response that you get from the other part. But Merle, I think we did a fairly good job. I think we were good. So I would give a yeah. What are we supposed to rate? Do we supposed to rate the experience or
your engagement? Yeah.
coordination?
How engaged did you feel, and then how coordinated?
Oh, I was definitely put on the spotlight during the dyadic task. So dyadic task definitely 10. So it was much engaged because I felt like in an improv theater and somebody's putting your connection. So in the group performance task, I have to hand off to Samis' creativity because we were much less creative than Samis was with his facial expression. That was amazing. Though in the group performance task, yeah, as you're part of the group, you feel like the focus distribution is the focus of attention is less on you. So you geez, I lost the word.
It'll come back. They always do.
Yes. So you feel like a fish in a big swarm. So I would say I would give us a solid the group a solid 8.
Very nice. What about you, Julien? Why don't you tell us about your experience?
I would start with the group. I also had Semi in most of my screen, so it didn't feel like a group actually, although I had a little peripheral vision of the others. I would put a 5 because of that, because it didn't feel as a group, and I've done Mirror Game as a group, and I know how crazy it can get. But a 5 still, because Semi was a very good leader, and I was really enjoying the task. I was just missing the group part of it. For the dyadic, I would put a 7, 8, something, say 7.5, because I enjoy it. I was at some point frustrated because of the delays due to the connection, but at the same time excited by it, because it's a new way of playing the games. I have played the mirror games many times, so there was some novelty in this special condition. And what I realized is that this delay was mostly problematic for the mutual condition to install a flow and get into creative momentum that is completely intersubjective. I find that with this remote way of connecting, it's harder to do than in real life. So there is a bit of mixed feeling, because at the same time there was the frustration compared to the real life, and also some excitement because of the novelties of the technological conditions of the mirror game. So thank you for making us experience this new way of mirroring.
It's an experience, right? What about you, Masis?
Hello, everybody. First of all, thank you
Hello.
for this wonderful exercise, and Semi, congratulations once again. Well, I had different things on the spot in these two different experiences, because they were both strongest parts. In dyad exercise, of course, there was a much more intense and deeper connection between your partner. You had a chance to see and explore your partner's much more, and her expressions as well. In the group exercise, also Semih was pinned for some seconds. Then I thought, no, there should be something wrong. To get the impression, to get the feeling much more, I changed to the speaker view, so I've seen everybody. The strongest part of the group exercise was, of course, not one by one, but having this experience together with 12 people at the same time. So the power of these exercises were being together and doing the same things and trying to be synchronized, not only in two, but all together. So my impressions are, for dyads, 8.5, and for group exercise, 8.
We're getting some nice variants. It's good. It's great. What about you, Felix? I'm putting you on the spot now. You love this exercise, so you're only going to be positive.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to just do 10 and 10. No, yeah, I very much agree with Masis. I had for the group exercise, I put everyone on. I switched to gallery view, and I was actually had everyone on my screen. And what was really fascinating was this feeling of, just feeling of being part of a swarm, and you had everyone was, and I could feel that as the exercise was going on, we were being more and more coordinated, and that was a lot of fun. And it felt like that was something I hadn't done in a really long time. Felt like being part of a larger group, a group of like 10 plus people. That just hasn't happened in a very, very long time. And that feeling that, I had before, obviously before the pandemic, that sort of, there was a semblance of that. And I think I really enjoyed that. But I also have to say, with Semi Ali in the dyad, it was really fascinating. I had so much fun with him and following him. And it was really exactly what he was saying earlier, that you feel this really strong connection to someone you'd never met before, just because you were mirroring each other for a little while. And I have to say that the moment where Yasemin took away the leader-follower roles, and we were basically free to move as we wanted, and I was still looking at Semi Ali, and he was looking at me, and we were moving together, and this restriction was taken away, and we were we had this understanding of passing on the leader role to the other, just sort of seamlessly. There were no interruption. It was just, we were passing it. I was the leader for a couple of seconds, then he was the leader for a couple of seconds, and that interaction of non-verbally, seamlessly passing on the leader-follower role, that for me was absolutely the highlight. So I'm going to go at 10 for the dyad, and a 9 for the group.
Okay, great. Well, I hope that Diane, would you like to say something? I wasn't sure. Would you like to tell us about your experience?
Sure.
Me?
Hey.
Yeah, hi everyone.
You're saying, okay.
Diane,
Diane.
go ahead, Chet. Yeah, go ahead. No, whoever would like to speak may speak. This is an open forum. Go ahead. What did you
No, I
experience?
just wanted to
as an
say that
observer?
I joined as in the middle of the group exercise because I had an issue with the link. And that was really interesting because I actually didn't know what you guys are doing. I'm familiar with this exercise, but I didn't know who was the leader. So I put everyone on gallery mode, and I just started looking, like observing who was leading this group, and it was kind of interesting because I looked at everyone because I was trying to figure out if you told someone to lead or whether this is like an open session. So it was really nice. And I can like give a rate only to the group exercise. So I would say 9.
Excellent. Okay, and then Diane, would you like to say something?
Sure. I've been doing this for a long time, and it's astonishing to me and humbling that it never occurred to me to try this with my Zoom class. So thanks. With the dyad, it was very intimate, and it's 8 o'clock, 8:30 now. I was just waking up, and it was luxurious to I was the leader first. And so there was a kindness. It's amazing through the screen, that kindness of like without even speaking, staying at each other's pace. And then by the time we switched roles, after we brushed our teeth and shaved our faces, we accelerated and moved into much more diverse movements, and it felt like I was on a ride. It was it was just like the beginning, and then it was really lovely. So just that visceral experience was really wonderful. It was very intensely focused because there's this in the back of my mind, this potential for screen issues to happen. So it's much more focused than it would be necessarily in person. There's no time for nervousness or whatever. It's just pure enjoyment and focus. So I'd give that I'd go 10. And if you want it to be realistic, I guess you could say a 9. But honestly, it felt like one of the best mirroring experiences I've had and this is the first time it's not been in person. And in the group, unfortunately, I pinned Semi, as wonderful as you were. I kept wanting to unpin him, but then I'm like, no, I'll blow the whole movement thing. So I didn't. So that pulled me out of it a little bit, but I could peripherally see people, and I felt that sort of group energy through the screen. And I don't think that's something I was manifesting on my own. So I found that remarkable. But I didn't feel as connected. So it was really just two different things. If I had to rate them in terms of, which experience would I want to do again, then the dyad would be a 10 and the group would be like a 7, I think.
That is, well, I have to say that I am humbled by you saying this is the most, the best mirror experience you've had, because that means no matter what else follows, we've had a positive effect. So that's really great. And I do think it was the very best possible thing we could have done to start our conversation. So I really have to thank Yasmin and Felix again for coming up with this idea and for putting it together in such a way that meant that I, as a more of an empiricist, so I am actually also an opera singer, but we don't play mirror games. We just make a lot of noise. But more auditory game is my thing, but Zoom doesn't allow for that. So it was really nice to move into a domain that I'm less familiar with. But thank you so much to Yasmin and Felix, and to all of you for putting your embarrassment and awkwardness and technological fears to one side and giving yourselves up to the task at hand, because I think it really was exactly what we needed to come up with a lot of the really core concepts, to feel them. And so many people use the word visceral, but we all felt these concepts of, what it's like to have that moment where you go, oh, I'm doing something wrong, I need to correct. And some of the big things that occurred to me, people also mentioned, so I know that we're all thinking the same thing, but what do people feel like, would people like to just, pick up on one of the topics that was brought up and throw it into the circle for people to discuss, or would you like me to provide you with one of my top? Oh, Travis has got a hand, so we go straight to Travis.
Well, I just wanted to talk more about that shift between like the leader versus the sort of you both can lead, because Felix had a nice example. And I felt like mine was a bit similar but with Julian, but then that delay was kind of a bit more like maybe thought I was going to take the lead, but then I see you're going the other way, and then you know you would kind of like autocorrect to try to have that back and forth. So I wonder what experiences other people had with the shift to leaderless coordination.
Go ahead, Alexander.
I just unmute myself for the just in case. But I think Mela was still the leader.
I am always the leader.
I realized that, but there's nothing bad to it. That was just funny. Yeah.
I'll give you an anecdote. So we have a party twice a year with a very large group of people, which I'm also missing, Felix. And my kids get all dressed up, and it's beautiful because they're getting into this world of dancing, till Cinderella time. And I have two daughters, both of whom are firecrackers, and I'm very proud of it. And my husband was trying to tell my daughter that no, that the man has to lead, and she just went, no. I've created two monsters of myself, so I apologize. Yes, I did.
There's no worries. I know what you mean. There's a certain type that you have to be born with, and one of my daughters is the same. She's Mr. General, and whoever's not in her command, she will stomp him to the ground. So it's.
I have to admit, I am definitely more of that type. So I apologize. I tried. I really was. I had the same feeling I have when I dance with my poor husband. I was like, let him go. Let him. I'm a terrible follower. I'm a terrible, terrible follower. So yeah, I killed that, I'm afraid.
No, that was an experience because it's part of the dynamic of the task, right? You're giving you're giving a direction to be a follow leader. So the experience that we had, that somebody still was one of the leaders, is part of the interesting experience that a task brings along with him. So I just want to mention it.
Individual differences are everything. Who would like to go next? And Yuval, what about you? Oh, Serdar is putting his hand up, so we go to you. Go ahead.
That's okay. Just occurred to me. I think I was the only one who rated the group exercise higher than the dyad. If that's true, it just occurred to me. It was a feeling of
that's true.
Ritual, I think, because we have a way of, if we've been in rituals, of losing ourselves in the group. So there is less consciousness, I think, in a group, at least for me. I think that was the part that made me feel like I was really aligned or coordinated or just lost myself in the group. So it felt more natural and perhaps more meaningful or enjoyable for that reason. Just wanted to bring that up.
Yuval, would you like to take over from that point?
So I really like I have much experience with the mirror game in a dyadic form, but I never tried it in a group form. So it was, for me, it was very stimulating and interesting to do. And I thought about what Travis said with the feedback. I think that might be something sort of crucial. So in the leader follower, and then when we had no leaders in the dyadic form, there was always feedback. So, even if I'm the follower, still the leader is sort of there trying to see whether I'm with him or not. At least this is what I felt. And in the group, it was sort of like a star communication, like the hub is emanating the signals, but there is no sort of give and take, no crosstalk between everybody. And what I'm thinking, Serdar, which is might be interesting. Maybe you need more information in order to have to sort of average out like this swarm feeling. I also, like someone else said, I pinned the Semi on my screen, so I didn't really see. I didn't felt like part of a group. I was just trying to follow Semi, and then sort of you see like people are sort of semi-aligned with you, but it didn't feel like we managed to sort of coalesce together. Also with the singing, but that could be also just my embarrassment of hearing myself.
So I'd like to, yeah, sorry, go ahead. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. Go ahead, sorry.
I'm good.
Yeah. So several people have mentioned this idea of, who they had pinned. And this is really interesting for me because from a computational point of view, do we assume that all the followers in your star are just connecting and following the lead of this very rigid, semi, muscle man, in the center? Or, is it that we focus just on one, right? And I think this is a really, because I actually kind of like it. We were supposed to, I think, say to everybody to use the gallery view, but I kind of like that we have this ability to compare and contrast people's experience of having either pinned or had a gallery view, because I think that that's probably what also happens in group coordination, right? Like either you choose to focus on one person because you know that they're reliable, or they happen to be, your desk partner in your violin section, or they happen to be, the closest to you, your nearest neighbor. Or you probably mix strategies and you focus primarily on one person, but you also every now and then look around, make sure you're not completely out. So I think it's kind of nice that we can talk to each other about what the various experiences were. But your idea of this, what I'd never thought about, is that in a leader in a larger group maybe will either appear as or will be more rigid, whereas in the dyad, because it's just that kind of an experience where a leader can do a bit more of a mix of strategies. He can primarily try and provide a stable signal for you to follow, but he can also, adapt and realize, oh,
right.
I'm not.
You fine tune the signal to the person.
Yeah, so that's super interesting. I had never thought of it. And Diane's got her hand up, so I'm going to shoot to her.
I think that Travis's question about that transition to no leader in the dyads is really crucial in this discussion, because for my experience of that was it was very fluid, and I don't think that that's happened before. And I think again, because it was so focused here, there were no external in a classroom when you're doing mirroring. There are all these other variables that can interrupt that sort of connection, and this was very, very close. So I didn't feel like it. I actually wrote a note that it felt there are times when people are like, oh, pretend you're passing a ball of energy. And it really felt that we were sort of through the screen going, okay, it's you, but there was no conscious thought. We would just sort of shift into it. And that was remarkable to me. I didn't know anything about this program before I started. I just said, Yasmin said, come, and I was like, okay. So I didn't have any expectations. So I was startled by how easily that worked. If the group had been with following Semi, if we had been in gallery view and we had gone to the point of, okay, now Semi's going to release control, someone else take it. I'm really curious about what that seems to be more comparable than comparing the dyad just to Semi by himself with people pinning and people in groups, in terms of because when doing this in the classroom in groups, that would be the next step in a group, would be that Semi would begin and then gradually someone else would take the lead, and the group has to be sensitive enough to sort of be perceptive and pick up those sort of peripheral senses, not sensors, signals. So that's I found that was I didn't mention that before, and I silly because I had it written down, that was what I think that's what was missing in the group for me, was that it wasn't a back and forth. It was like a gym class. It was fun, and he has a wonderful face. It was really neat to play, but it wasn't the same type of connection.
So I was actually thinking, just so that everybody knows that they'll have to do it again, so you could escape before we do. But I had thought just before we started, I was quickly writing notes to myself, all the things I wanted to achieve. And it occurred to me that, so in the conference that has preceded this, we've had people doing nonverbal communication, people doing more verbal communication, people doing problem solving and so on. So there are lots of ways in which people coordinate and become aligned. And some people would say that these nonverbal forms are the quickest, that we've developed them, evolutionarily speaking, because they're super quick. They're an easy way to figure out who you're dealing with. And one thing that Travis and I are working on is that it might also be a great, safe way to play and learn. So to learn about strategies of coordination that you can then apply in other domains. But one thing I thought we could do is, after we've discussed, after we've coordinated at a verbal level, to then go back and try a nonverbal coordination task again. And then maybe we can do exactly as you've asked, Diane, and make the group version a little bit more reciprocal, and see if we can get you to leave here having done all of the things you normally do in the classroom, and you can then really say what it's like all on Zoom. But I think it would be a useful exercise when we finished our talk to wrap this up and to put us in the very best mood for the rest of the day for the people who are on the other side of the Atlantic, and for the rest of the weekend for people who are very glad that we're coming to the end of Friday. So that's just a thought that we can do it again. We have it in our power. We are here. But on that note, maybe I will pass the ball to Masis, because I'm sure you have lots of things to say.
People already told lots of nice things, so I don't know what to add, but I also do this exercise with my choirs. I'm a conductor in Istanbul. So I love this exercise. I did both in pairs, in dyads, and also in group. But of course, it's not as practical as it is here to do it with groups in a real room. Of course, the energy is real, but here we can see everybody's faces, or like, I mean, everybody here in this gallery view. So it has both the advantages and disadvantages. I don't know what else to say. It's always nice to experience this from different angles and all of these people's point of view. So yeah, it was nice. It's always nice for me.
But I suppose that maybe brings a really poignant question to mind. Oh, Felix is raising his hand, and Olga's raising her hand. Go ahead, Felix, and then go ahead, Olga. You can just talk. Go ahead, raise hand.
Yeah, what I realized was that it actually made me think of one of the talks we had, I think on Wednesday, because when we were in the group exercise and I was in gallery mode and I had everyone there, my screen was in the top left of my little window was in the top left of the screen, and I was obviously looking, and I was trying to look at Semi and trying to follow his movements. But then I would also make sure that I wanted to look at what does it look like what I'm doing, right? So I kept going back to the top left corner of my screen to see what did it look like what I was doing. So I was kind of trying to, control my movements by actually looking at myself. And then you, Mel, you were right next to me, so there was always
next to you.
There's this little moment where I'd be like, okay, so this is what Semi's doing, so I'm trying to do that, and I want to, okay, what does that look like? And I was looking at what I was doing, and I was like, oh, okay, this is what Mel is doing. And I think there was then a kind of I was mostly looking at Semi, but then there was always this sort of a bit of correction, both of where I had physically put myself and the way that I was moving, the speed at which I was moving. And then because you were right next to my window, I was also sort of taking that information into account and again, correcting for that. And it made me think of one of the talks where you had a grid of 9 people, and they were always there was some sort of peripheral correction going on, but they were mostly focused on the one person right in front of them. And I think I kind of had a similar experience with both you and Semi just now, where I would mostly look at a Semi, but then I had the sort of peripheral input that was coming from you, Mo. So that was just.
This is so great, because I don't know if you realize this all, but I am actually using this to make sure that we can start running some experiments along these lines. And what you've basically just said, Felix, is that the nearest neighbor effect, that we were seeing in Alan Wing and Mark Elliott's talk is going to work even in the domain of Zoom, which is very interesting from a sort of metaphysical level, because we're clearly not neighbors. We are nowhere near each other. Actually, we're probably in space. I'm closest to Olga in space, and then maybe Yasmin, and then Felix. But in Zoom space, it's kind of neat. We could experimentally, Travis, I'm thinking of these cool experiments. We could move people's pins around. Oh, this is going to be great. So that's fantastic. That's fantastic input that the nearest neighbor effect is going to hold. We have hands going everywhere. So Olga had a question or a comment. Then is your name Chen, bottom right? Okay, so then you'll go next, and then Alexander. Go ahead, Olga.
Okay.
Oh, Olga, your sound is, Olga, just maybe make sure you stay quite close to the mic because it went in and out.
Okay. Is it okay like this?
Perfect.
Okay. First of all, thank you very much for this amazing experience and for the invitation. So the expertise I'm bringing with me is rather cultural and a bit philosophical. That's the intellectual part. The practical part is that I have been doing martial arts for several years. And that's what I was kind of reminded by this exercise, because there are group exercises in martial arts, but then also the partner, the dyad exercises. And I just had the same effect during the dyad exercises. It's a very mindful experience. So it's very meditative and it's very mindful because you're concentrated on your partner. And it's fun, of course it's fun. So I would rate it the highest. I would give it like 10 out of 10. If it wasn't for the group experience, because the group experience is for me a whole new level of fun, because you have the mindful part, of course, but then also a little bit of a dissociated part, because you observe a very large team, a very large group doing the same, coordinated, and this is what adds to this positive experience, and it's a whole additional new level of positive for me personally.
So you would rate the group as higher than the dyad?
So I would rate the group as the highest and the dyad as a couple of points below.
Okay, and then
that's just my impression.
No, perfect. Chen, would you like to take over next? Just unmute yourself.
Yeah, actually it's Chen, but it's really difficult to pronounce, so it's okay. You guys hear me? Okay. Okay. I just wanted to say that I practice this kind of exercises a lot as a dancer, and during this pandemic, we did a lot of classes at using Zoom, and I think that Felix, you made me think about it. The fact that you don't just see your closest neighbor, the fact that you see yourself, it's also a little bit philosophical, but it gives another dimension to how do I react to the things that I see. I mean, if I see you doing something, so I see you, and usually if I'm in the studio, so I have a kind of representation in my mind, how do I look when I do it, or if I'm doing it correctly. And here you can actually see how does it looks like. So it's given another dimension of reaction to the things we do. But I guess that in my experience, from my experience, when we do this kind of things in a group, so I think that the Zoom has a big partial parts of our body. So the signal is a little bit easier to follow, perhaps. Especially when you said, Yasmin, use only your hands in one part. So it's also a nice thing to see that this platform allows, I don't know, reducing information somehow.
Well, reducing the scope, right, the range, what we were thinking about when we were coming up with the exercises is, and I mentioned this to Felix and Yasmin at the time because it's what it made me think of, but there's this, a movie called The Legend of 1900, which is about a piano player who's born and lives his entire life on a ship that crosses the Atlantic over and over again, back and forth. And the whole movie is about that idea of being able to create an infinite number of variations, but given a defined number of items. And in his case, the analogy is he's got these 88 keys, but within that within that defined framework, he can create an infinite number of variations. But the world is so infinite that he's too scared to step off the ship because he doesn't know what to do with that infinite number of options. And I think that it's kind of a neat analogy that most art forms will provide you with some kinds of limits. And I always have this image of these monks who did these incredible illuminations, but they were in this tiny little dark, cubicle, doing these incredibly ornate, beautiful, illustrations and illuminations. So I kind of think that there's something in it. When we create, generally, I wonder what that means for a group, because we have to keep focused on the theme of the day, which is what happens when we get into a group. And one of the things that has come up here is space, right? That our space in this format is such a strange thing. It has very little to do, we've had the idea of physical space being limited to parts of our bodies because we only see half of us. None of us know what the bottom half of us looks like. Our exercise is only with a limited number of limbs. So space is a strange thing in this medium, but I also think that space within a group is a strange concept that we have to kind of wrestle with. And I wonder, sort of one of the other questions that I mentioned earlier is, depending on your art form, obviously you're going to have a different sense of space. When you're a singer or a musician, space is a strange thing, right? When you're singing in a really big theater, you have to try and fill this space that you can't even see because it's dark out there. So you have to sort of imagine this space. You create the space. And it's only once you've opened your mouth and made the sound that the space actually even exists. And so space for a singer is a very strange thing. So we could have a whole discussion on what space is for dyads and groups. So that's another thought we could go on. But I really like the idea that you mentioned about self-representation in this format, because it's something I work on in my science, is this idea of how much of the me is actually part of the we, when we think of ways of computing and quantifying coupling in group coordination. And one of the thoughts I have is, as the group size increases, the relative contribution of the me, of the individual, is very likely to be reduced. Not always, because when you're the leader like me, you just amplify your sound so more people can hear you. But I really liked your idea that, and I certainly did the same, and it actually got in the way. So I don't know if everybody else had this, but when I was trying to coordinate with Alexander, if I looked at myself, it really, and it's also because of the time lag, obviously, but when I looked at myself, it got in the way. And when I didn't, when I just focused on the task at hand, just looking at Alexander or just looking at Semi, I felt like I did a much better job. So I wonder, there's this tension, right, both theoretically, but also experimentally, that you don't want to lose too much of the self, because then you won't be in control of your body and your actions. But you want to give up and just enough of yourself that you can actually focus all your intention on the other. So I really love that you mentioned self and other, because now I have lots to think about. Does anybody want to? Yeah, go ahead, Seda.
Just in response to what has been said and what you just now said, I was thinking of the intention. I didn't go into this with an empty mind. I'm sure none of us did. I was very specifically thinking about sort of preparing myself for this kind of discussion about my medium. I'm an artist. I'm a visual artist, and one of the first things I do, whether it's my own creative process, or if I'm working with a group of students around a creative project of theirs, so we're trying to sort of understand and move forward. What I've always relied on is trying to accomplish this one task. Subduing the intellect, the rational, analytical thinking process, because I've learned to trust that if I can manage that, Then I give my intuitive, emotional, instinctive self a chance to sort of, you know, have a deeper experience, right? So as I went into this exercise, like I said, the dyad, I pretty much messed up, so apologies again. But in the group exercise, I think I was already prepared to quiet down my intellect so that I could respond as naturally, as intuitively or instinctively as I could. But that's coming into this thing, you know, because I was thinking about these kinds of things. That may have had something to do with why I sort of preferred or enjoyed or rated higher the group exercise. It also reminded me of my, you know, college days, acting, and one of these exercises was, of course, this mirroring exercise was one of the exercises that we would do. That's decades ago, of course, but again, the idea was to sort of lose our control, let's say, which is, I think in my mind, is tied to this intellectual, you know, analytical, rational thinking process, which happens to be, at least in my experience, a bit of a bully. You know, it takes over. Our intellect, it always takes over. Not that we need to get rid of it, but I think for creative purposes, we need to sort of push the intellect at least to the background temporarily, so that we can have deeper experiences. We can give the intuitive, emotional part of our mind a chance to you know, make its own connections and, you know, come up with whatever it does from our consciousness or deep consciousness, right? And then when there's enough material, we employ analytical processes, you know, rational thinking, etc. So this was entirely my state of mind coming into this. And I'm guessing that it had an effect on how I was prepared to sort of lose myself in the group and go with that kind of flow and rhythm. Space, you mentioned, that's a whole, you know, huge, very interesting topic. I don't know if we can go into that now, but space was very confusing for me. So I totally gave up on it in this Zoom environment. I mean, as a visual artist, I'm very much into very carefully organizing space. Open-ended, but very carefully organized. So I have this, you know, I can visualize things. I can even visualize time in terms of rhythm, for instance, or movement in that space. But in this environment, it was very confusing. I just totally gave up on that.
I found it very confusing. Alexander, you had something to say, I think. I don't know if you remember what it was.
Actually, I'm trying to type in. Yes, the discussion is highly interesting, actually, and all of the contributions are highly amazing, giving one lots to think about. So I just want to comment on lots of stuff that many people said, which I find was amazing. For example, that Olga said that her martial arts experience kind of made her feel like she was performing, and I had actually the same thought, like when I was doing the exercise with you, that it was a little bit of a Tai Chi that to some extent that we were exercising. And what Chen mentioned about self-awareness, I found very interesting with regards to what you said then with regards to trust, which also relates to what Masi said about the task being in diet, being to focus on your partner. So this resulted in your meta knowledge and knowing that your partner in turn is focused on you. So you're being basically put on display, and your first of all, your task is to focus only on one social human being, and then again the awareness at this your interactive partner is focused on nothing else but you. created, first of all, this sense of more privacy, but then the other sense is put, like what Jen said, put you more on display, because it this awareness that you are being watched and each of your movements is being closely monitored, made you very, very self-aware, and resulted in a much more fine granular model. And what I also found interesting, what Yuval and Seda were discussing, is that that in the group movement, that it was less engaging. So I think one factor for this is maybe that the cards are stacked against us. I think the reason why the group exercise works is when everybody performs in the same environment and everybody has the same lighting, the same surroundings around them, and you see everybody modifying these in the same way, performing the same movements. Whereas here in Zoom, you have different lightnings, you have different backgrounds, which acts as a distractor to this exercise and sort of ruining it. And I find actually very remarkable that Seda was still able to engage and correctly describe the task as I understand it was supposed to work, that he was still able to exercise, whereas me, for example, I couldn't, and it was enough for the distraction for me to not to engage it. But what he said very much resonated with the entrainment that people usually experience when engaging in this synchronous activities. Yeah, I stopped talking now. That was far too much.
No, so what was really interesting is that Felix, Yasmin, and I did it. Was it yesterday? I can't remember. There's a blur of days, but we did it. And it was one of the most incredible experiences I've had in a very long time. I haven't made music with anybody other than my kids, which I'm not saying isn't the most wonderful thing in the world, but I haven't made music in the way that I'm used to for a very long time. And that was as close to, ensemble music making as I've got. So I have to sort of echo Felix's, point that I haven't had these feelings in a very long time. But when we were in that smaller group, it was just us three. It was so powerful. And I wonder if maybe, Alexander, it was just much more dispersed, and so it didn't reach threshold for you, which sort of brings to the fore a question, that has to be brought up, which is, are there scaling limits to group cohesion, especially when there's in the face of so much noise. So I think the point was that Alexander was making so well is that there are various elements of noise within this particular medium. And it can be, we misunderstood the task because we, didn't have the gallery view, or it can be, people have different lighting, or it can be, I heard my son screaming upstairs, or whatever the noise is, that it disperses the power of that effect. Whereas when we were doing it, Yasmin and Felix, I'm not very good at the game, but between us, we did a pretty good job, and it was so beautiful. I haven't danced since I was 17, and I felt almost like I was dancing. It was so wonderful. So I wonder if it's just if it's a scaling effect, whether 12 is just too many on a Zoom call. And we could definitely do experiments to see if it's much more powerful with 6 or 3, or if there's a magic number on Zoom where the size of the thumbnail has to be a certain way, or you could figure out what are the parameters that work best for this medium. So that was one of the points I wanted to make. And Yuval has got his hand up, so I'm going to throw the ball to you.
So along the same lines, I had a question for Masis and maybe also Diane as practitioners with groups. Is there a limit to the number? So my only experience is like when you go to a rock concert, or like you're in a massive, or in a football field, and you're singing the songs of your team, then everybody is aligned, and it feels great, right? The power of many, like the last rock concert sadly was quite a long time ago, but like 100,000 people singing together the songs. So I was wondering whether how does it scale? So continuing on Merla's question, so how does it scale? So probably 2 or 3 you can do it, but is it true that as you scale towards bigger and bigger numbers, is it only improving your ability to synchronize with others? Does it drop down? How does it work? Tell us.
Sorry, Yuval, you mean this mirror exercise?
No, like for you in choirs, like when people sing.
So you say, I mean, how big is the group? Does it affect the success or the synchronization? If you are too many, is it harder? Or if you are a very little group, is it easier, right?
Right.
To synchronize, to sync together. Well, of course, it is much easier if you are like, I don't know, 8 or 10 people instead of like 125, which we are in some concerts. For example, we were like more than 100. But of course, there are some keys, and if you catch that focus, then of course it is much harder. But the result, if you achieve that result, it is way powerful. And the thing in also this mirror game or in these visual things with bigger groups, for example, when you are 3 or 4, you do this kind of movements, like big movements rather than small ones. And if you are quite a big number of people, when like thousands of people like do only this small move, but everybody at the same time, the effect is much bigger than 3 people are doing. Like, for example, in singing as well, 100 people can do a huge range of dynamic changes. Like, we can sing way louder or can sing way softer. This also gives a big opportunity. This is not only an issue of synchronization. That's why I'm trying to tell the difference between the effects of smaller groups and bigger groups. So you do much bigger effects by doing very small moves, also visually and also in terms of singing. So yeah, I prefer to have this big dynamic range instead of easy work with 4 or 5 people. I enjoy much more to sing with like 100 people singing very piano like, and then forte, everybody is singing in full power. Yeah, this is my experience.
And
ahead, Chen.
Diane?
Oh, Diane first, sorry, and then we'll move on to Jen. Yeah.
The mirroring exercise for my purposes, when I'm using it with a smaller, usually I'm using there are studies that have been done that say that 12 is about the maximum in a room to keep people engaged generally. And I'm very rarely fortunate enough to have a drama class or a cast that is 12 or less. And if you get below 6 in a class, that creates big space that you it has to be adjusted for. So with the mirroring, the focus of the point of focus for the game is, for me, usually in the smaller groups, to get scene partners to pay attention to their partners. It's not about the technical. I don't really care if they move in sync. Definitely, what I care about is that they're having an experience together. And if they do get beautiful movements, then we might incorporate that into the show. That's sort of gravy. With bigger groups, again, it can be used for choreography. It can be used for a sort of group dynamic that brings the ensemble feeling in ways that me talking to them about it would never, and it would take a long period of the whole rehearsal process for them to sort of become cohesive. So these are sort of, I don't want to call them shortcuts, because they do take a great deal of courage and in terms of vulnerability on the part of the participants, but they do bring them closer faster. And so they are then able to execute other activities with more unity of sort of spirit. And I think that it has to, I was thinking about this earlier. If I wanted to teach, when I want to teach the students a folk dance for a scene in Romeo and Juliet for the ball, then most of that teaching process is going to be the whole group following one or two people and getting very synced. And I'm not looking, because it's a party, I'm not looking for the Rockettes all moving exactly the same way. I'm looking for humans dancing, right? So the mirroring allows for just the acceptance of, my hand is smaller. It's going to move in a different way from your hand. So, but at the same time, we're doing it together. In a smaller group, if I were trying to, like for Romeo and Juliet, who are the focus of the scene, I'll take them into a room and have them work together on something. So because they're going to be spotlighted and their moves have to be accented through the piece in a way that they pull focus. So I don't know if that answers the question, but I am sort of, this has been an astonishing, it's like cleaning everything out and letting me see things new. So I really appreciate it. And thanks, Yasmin, for inviting me, my dear. Thank you.
Okay, go ahead, Chen, and then we have Alexander.
I just want to, I want to say a few things. First of all, I think that it's very important to point out the difference between something that is being rehearsed, or like Yuval said, singing all together in a big concert and everybody are familiar with the words and they sing at the same time. And so this is synchronization. And the second thing is like improvising together and creating something that we don't know for sure what is going on. And I think that you said, Merle, that you did it, the three of you, but you guys know each other, that's correct. So I think that it's very important for me to mention that it depends on practice. When we practice this ability, in my opinion, so the more we practice, the more we can do it in larger groups. Because I feel always that it's a tension or a threshold between being in action or being in reaction. For example, if I'm doing like dance improv with 12 or 20, I did it with 30 and 40 people already. And there is this threshold between, okay, I'm starting something. Is anyone following? And if not, so I have to give up. I have to withdraw what I just did and being like in reaction now to what's going on. So I think in the personal level, there is this threshold, and this what creates the engagement. And the more we practice it in a group, the more we can do it together. We understand how to manipulate those feelings within ourselves and within the group that we practice with. And I think that also when the larger the group is, the more information is being lost on the way, like small movements that some people do and no one notices it. So I think that this is also a very important thing to think about, because maybe if we lose more information, we can be more synchronized together.
That is so, it's so on topic. I don't know if Travis is also thinking the things that I'm thinking, because we're writing a paper on improvisation. So everything you're saying is super helpful. And this idea of signal loss is incredibly insightful, because, and I was thinking along those lines, the idea that either as an audience member or one in a group, there's no way you can track very subtle errors or, subtle changes in signal. So clearly you have to be doing some kind of averaging, some kind of like bigger brush strokes, right? So it's what you were saying was super helpful for my own work. So I first want to say thank you.
Or you can suddenly do something very surprising, and now everybody is following you because they have no other choice, because now you're like
Well,
It's
we
something
heard
that
about
can't
that
be
in our
ignored.
talk today as well, this idea that an extreme, I don't know if you watched that talk, Travis, but we heard about how people, I know this sounds absolutely totally off topic, but we had somebody talking about how you sway voters. And the idea is that one very good strategy is to provide a big change in signal, and in fact, an extreme signal. So everything you say is perfectly on topic, but I'll switch to Alexander before I take up too much time. Go ahead, Alexander.
Oh, actually, this makes my job a lot easier because I'm glad actually you both touched on the thing that I actually wanted to mention, and Chen, yeah, brought it very, very nicely, the signal loss. I wanted to comment on what Yuvan and Mrs. will also discuss with regards to singing. So how is the immersion to a small crowd versus bigger crowd work? And from standpoint of somebody who cannot sing and whose wife always keeps reminding him of this, if I try to sing with my children, I would just resonate with the signal loss aspect that Chen brought up, is that when you have a larger crowd who is contributing to an auditory output, and if you cannot sing and you miss the tones and you miss the notes, you still have the feeling you don't get as precise feedback on your deviation from the crowd, because your errors are being overshadowed by the noise of the singing that the crowd is making. So in a sense, you get a higher feeling of immersion if you're not able to perform the task as well as the others, because you got the visual feedback of everybody else performing well, and also perhaps the auditory, whereas your errors are being minimized because you're not concentrating on yourself as much, or they're again being suppressed by the others.
That's super important. Go ahead, Masis.
Well, I have to say this experience differs because it depends on your choice, depends on your preparation, depends on the quality you want to reach. Even if we are like 125, we always would like to have all individual singers one by one as perfect as possible. So we are really controlling like before the concert, like with using a lot of different methods. So of course that brings kind of a much more self-confidence, or less being afraid when singing in a bigger group rather than a small one. But of course it depends on the preparation and the level you want to achieve. So if you are prepared enough, and if you are like confident enough, because you know the piece, you know what to do, you know how to do, you know how to react in certain different parts of the piece, then in a 10-person group or in a 125-person group, you will have kind of the same individual maximum contribution to the whole. So it differs a little bit, depends on your choice.
Yeah, go ahead, Julia.
Yeah, I was resonating with all the past interventions, and going back to what Yuval asked about choirs. I have conducted a choir once in my life. It was 18 years old students, and I wanted to give them a sense of what self-organization of neural assemblies could be. And I was trying to see how I could teach that to them, psychology students. So not in front of mathematics and physics. And so I decided to make a choir with them, and asking them to spontaneously just hum on a single frequency. So there were 200, and of course what I hoped that would happen did happen, is that progressively and then abruptly they switched toward an harmonious choir with all the 200 students. Although it was not the task. The task was just do your frequency and sing. And then with the question of Yuval, I was thinking that with large groups, you can attain much more powerful effects of coordination. But then you are restricted in your repertoire of coordination to very stable relations. And then this resonates with what Ren was saying about the loss of information, which is also a loss of noise. And with less noise and less fluctuations, you lose the opportunity to switch toward new patterns. And this is where creativity lies. It is when you are switching toward patterns that you are discovering, something that was not stable before you discovered that pattern. So this might explain why it is sometimes harder to have a creative behavior within large groups, although it is easier to coordinate very stable sort of behaviors in very large ensemble. But I would be interested in hearing what others like Massis, for example, think about this, because now we are talking about ensemble of choir, but indeed, do you also do that in terms of improvised ensemble, or only following composition scored?
Yeah, go ahead, Massis.
Thank you, Julien. I was just going to say, we also do improvisational sessions, especially at the beginning of each new season with each group we have. So this group can be maybe 40 people or more than 100 people. We always have two experiences in these improvisational sessions. One is we just say, like, I'm just describing in a very simple way. We will just start. One person will start to do something, can produce any sound with his or her body or voice. And then one by one, like a pyramid, we will add on it. And then we will come to a certain point, and then one by one, we will, so hereby aiming to listening to each other and also thinking about controlling yourself or how shall I say, like being conscious or losing your consciousness. So the difference or the mixture of them. We always try first, and we achieve a very nice sound with a lot of good feelings and a high climax, like a strong ritual. And then when we finish, we just have a discussion. Some people usually tell, like, well, it was wonderful, I lost myself, I was like in a forest, like in a jungle, in a ritual, like in ancient times. And some people always say, like, well, okay, it was nice, but we didn't follow the instruction, like the one by one adding and one by one releasing. And then we try once again. And in this second attempt, the climax always like never goes high as the previous one, but it always becomes like a little bit more symmetrical, mathematical, logical. And after these two experiences, like we always share, we always come to idea that we should mix all these, also the consciousness, and also like losing and like losing yourself and unconsciousness together. So neither one of them or nor the other is only the way to do it. It's way better if you use them all, if you mix them also in also smaller groups, and in also bigger groups. Of course, the effects change.
And do you have the impression that the difference is more in terms of coordination or of creativity?
Well, the first one, while there was no concrete information, it is way creative. And the second attempt, after a little bit more explanation about the structure, the creativity goes down.
No, yeah.
And the mathematics and the schemes comes forward.
Which reminds us what sorry, I'm confused with what Serdar was telling us earlier, with this gesture of unfocusing a little bit the attention, which I also want to resonate with that. I really like what you said, because I was writing about it just before the meeting first, and when you are in a more cognitive, controlled, logical way of thinking, then you have a linear reasoning. And in linear reasoning, there are not many consequences of your reasoning. You have one solution or two or something. But when you take that away, there is I felt in group exercises, for example, a certain readiness to react to multiple possible futures. Like you're ready to jump on something you didn't expect. When you are in a more controlled cognitive style of being into the interaction, then the logical consequences are very few. So it's really difficult to get creative. And when I was interacting with Travis, sometimes I was like thinking, am I well synchronized? Am I giving nice instructions? And then when I think, you are focused on one or two objects, and you cannot be creative, and you cannot be reactive creatively to the little changes that you can notice in the other. So I think that in these questions of creative coordination, it's a really important question of how do we unfocus the attention on the self or the cognitive control style of thinking to be able to embrace whatever future shows his nose, and you can pick it and say, oh, I can go that direction, or we could do that movement, or we could do that. And one of the examples, it's an experience I'd like to share, was when we improvised with Travis in the mutual condition. Again, going back to Yuval, when he was speaking about the rigidity of the leader. I have an issue with the definition of leader in the literature about coordination, because the leader is someone who is not listening to the other. Is the leader is defined as the one who is followed most of the time, or the one who is blind to the other. And as a musician, I cannot relate to that. A good leader is the one who is a good listener too. And with Travis, we were improvising, and at some point I had my hand in front of my eyes. I was supposed to lead. And the 1 second I could not see him, I was incapable of leading because I did not have his feedback. Although in the scientific literature, I would be a perfect leader, not seeing the follower. But I think this is a very important point that we have to raise in our discussions and experiments. How the leader is also, if not above all, a listener of the other. And maybe some...
I just want to make a quick comment. I think it depends on the setting, and in personal psychology, there are very many different leader types that are defined, and depending on the situation, you could have an immersive leader, you could have a directive leader, you could, and like you said, and depending on the situation, you have a leader that leads by supporting everybody, whereas other situations, you have the one stereotypical one that leads by directing each one and everyone. Yeah.
In this particular game, it's interesting though, because you are leading, but by definition, I guess the task is that you don't just want to go crazy and then no one can, your follower can't follow you. But it's like you want to move subtly and make sure they're moving with you. So you're leading and you're attending to them and making sure that they're coming with you. And I don't know. I like your point, Julien, about the kind of flow aspect of this, and I think that really touches upon what's the creative aspect here, and that you're kind of just in the flow and you're doing something. And if you think about it too much, at least I felt this way, that I don't feel like I'm being creative. I'm like making these choices and just deciding where to put my hands or something, rather than creating something together. So I found that really interesting.
But Julien, you made me think. Oh, sorry.
No, I was just going to say, go ahead.
You made me think also. That's really interesting, because I thought about like the signal to noise ratio, and whenever the signal to noise ratio is high, so you probably have more creative ideas, because you have more sources to pay your to give your attention to, and then you can generate creative ideas. And on the other hand, I'm asking, I don't have a solution for this. On the other hand, maybe when we have a lower signal to noise ratio, so there is more flow, as you said, Travis, and then we can be like, because flow is also known as something that helps you generate creative ideas, or think more, like feel more free maybe in the space, and have like your mind open up. So I guess they're both interesting, and maybe it depends on the context, like what do we create, or what do we do, or what kind of creativity we're looking for.
I like your point, Shen, and it reminded me a bit of when I was attempting to coordinate with Semi. Sorry if I'm mispronouncing that. Because he had such rich facial expressions, and then he had he started doing something with just one finger at a point, and then I felt like I was kind of like rapidly trying to scan to see, okay, is he doing something with his faces, or is it like, is this just like a diversion? And I don't know if that is kind of getting at your aspect that you mentioned, like the signal to noise, like what are the many possible things that I'm attempting to coordinate with, and how does that relate to sort of, yeah, what we were kind of doing together?
I want to just let everybody know that we have about 8 minutes left before we take our coffee break and prepare ourselves for our keynote speaker at 4. So we can have a last back and forth on a particular topic, but I think it would be very nice to end our session as we started, with a version of the mirror game as a group, and see whether having discussed things with one another has helped or hindered our ability to coordinate with one another, to feel one with one another. But does anybody have any final remarks before we do that? Yeah, go ahead, Alexander.
I actually have a question to the group, because looking at the name of the workshop, it gave me a lot of thought, because what is creativity? And I don't think there is a good definition of creativity out there, and even the best researchers, Amabil from Harvard, she just goes with a working definition, but basically saying creativity is what other people perceive as creative. And there were the one aspect put by Seda was sort of letting go your conscience and letting go the analytical thought, and kind of letting your mind flow, and without your intervention discover new patterns, and then by your meta control realizing these new patterns, bringing them consciously forward, and this thus being the process of creativity. And I just like to throw in another dimension, as there's also a creative process in writing, where you could argue that perhaps it is exactly the opposite the case, that you through analytical thought you create something that wasn't there, perhaps by writing a poem or perhaps poem is not as, but in a scientific article that where you through analytical thought and through self-reflection you create something that wasn't there. So I want to ask the group how it feels about creativity, what dimensions you see in this construct, and how you go about it. Thank you.
Julien, do you want to take Travis? We go Travis and then Julien. Go ahead, Travis.
Okay, I'll be brief. So I thought this was really interesting as like a musician in my free time. The mirror game, this was actually my first time doing this. So that felt like very creative, because everything I was doing or was new, so to speak. So I think this novelty aspect that Alexander mentioned is important, but then it might be like, whether it's newness that's only self-referential, that this is something that I'm doing now that's new, say when I'm playing guitar and I've been working on some chord progression and now I have some breakthrough, which is like some progression I didn't think of before, then that feels creative. But if it's just the same thing that I've been doing before, it doesn't feel like it's something that's new. Whereas for someone else, it may be something totally new and sounds very creative, even if it's something you have known about or created for quite some time.
Can I say something very quickly? Not as moderator, but as in a response to what Travis said, is so to put it into the context of this conference, which is on group creativity. I think there's something interesting there in that by being in a group, you get feedback as to whether it's novel for everybody or just novel for you on the one hand. But also, you are more likely to create something novel that is novel to both of you because of the input of two, where the sum of the parts is greater than the individual component. So I think there is something that needs to be added to Alexander's question, which is what is group creativity? Because it seems to me, and I put this forward at the very first alignment conference last year, where Travis was part of the first workshop on what creativity is. And I put forward the very bold claim that we only are ever really creative with other people. Maybe sometimes it is only funneled out of one individual in the end, but I always feel like there's always somebody else in the background, even for individual creative efforts. So I would like to add that I think there's something very special about group creativity. Sammy, you've been so quiet. We've had your face, but less of your voice. Go ahead.
No, it was interesting, everybody's ideas. So I agree. As you say, I resonate with many people's, and I have similar experiences. Just I wanted a little thing what you say. Like in creative process, there is always another. Like I want to expand it a bit from like the people, like human side. Like there's always another human, but I think we can say another individual or another body there. Like it doesn't should be a human. For example, in this very example, like here, what makes me like in the beginning with Felix, like his looks, how he looked at me when I was leading, is like give me a feeling, like expression. He's like he was looking so, I don't know the word, but like I don't like with energy. Like I was there's a kind of playful side. Like I want to go more playful because he gives me that playfulness. And if he was another one, like this creativity, like another body, but at the same time, in one moment, also in the group, I feel it. I realized because it was my first time doing this in Zoom, and I don't have many Zoom like talks, but like this borders like here, and this is the space, and I feel it is another body to play with. So in one moment when I like do this, because I see I'm motivated, but my face can, so it's another body to trigger the like so in the space, like there are other bodies, like I agree with you, with another always this creativity goes, but it doesn't have to be human. It is the space, it is the other bodies, and the body always move. There's no, and this movement triggers a kind of creativity. I want to like just leave at this point. Thank you.
I want to add a reaction into Zoom, which is mind blown. That was beautiful. That was like the best thing I've heard today. So you should talk more often. Go ahead, Masis.
As I tried to tell in this improvisational example, I just want to say about this something about this creative process. What is creativity? What is group creativity? I think it's more like using the power of both the consciousness and unconsciousness in a kind of a dynamic, balanced way, with efficient methods, of course, to put what everybody has in themselves and make them contribute in this creative session to create a continuous line without any interruption. I think the most important thing, or the very important goal of this process, is to achieve that continuity or continuous line without the interruption. But of course, using using these efficient methods to do that, to use both consciousness and unconsciousness.
So nice. Okay, so we've got flow, we've got so many big words. Julien, would you like to give us the final word of the conference?
Oh, okay. So I will try to have creativity, of group creativity. Maybe I would see it as the collective discovery of something that was not expected, that was unexpected, and unexpected by the participants, but also unexpected from an external observer that would not expect this pattern to emerge from the properties of these individuals. And as you say that there is always another in creativity, I think that even in individual creative achievements, what we become is a sort of another, as a transformation of the self, because we are discovering something new about ourselves. We now realize we are able to do something we did not know we could do. Okay, this was an improvised
It was a
definition.
fantastic ending. I think you would get applause. If Zoom did applause properly, you would get a great round of applause. So maybe to bring this session to a close, I will ask you all once again to focus your attention on now everybody. We're just going to try and start as a group. And then I'm going to ask somebody to offer up to be the leader. And at some point, I want you just to take control. Who's going to be the leader? Somebody offer up. And it doesn't have to be Semi, but if nobody offers, it's going to be him. Oh dear, that's just your role then. Okay, in life. So we'll start as a group, so no leader. And then Semi, I want you to take the lead and then relinquish it. Okay. And we'll just stick to that.
I will start again.
We're gonna start just as a group, as a like the open hum, no leader, just chaos. See what happens to the entropy measure there, and then slowly but surely you can take the lead, and then relinquish it.
Okay, like you will tell me. Sorry, I just.
No, you could just take the lead when you're ready. Okay, and then we can dissolve, and then I will bring the session to a close without any more words. Okay, go ahead. And just hands, by the way.